In this episode of the Exploring Information Security Podcast, we're exploring Cribl.
Computers now have primary control of critical functions.
Houston, recommend vector transfer.
Your go for APU shutdown on time.
Roger, go for deploy.
Nice to be in orbit.
Welcome to the Exploring Information Security Podcast, where you will learn, explore, and grow your security mindset. I'm your host, Timothy D. Block, and in this episode, we will be exploring Cribl. With me to do that is Field CISO at Cribl, Ed Bailey, who's also a former client. Show notes can be found at exploresec.com/EIS. Feedback for the show, timothy.dblock@exploresec.com. Can hit me up on LinkedIn too. You can also rate the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. If you're listening to this on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button. You can join our community on Discord and the listserv by going to exploresec.com/community, or just go to exploresec.com. There's a community button in the top right. You can click on that and get all the invites for all the fun stuff we're doing in the community. So this was a good one. I've heard of Cribl before, as you'll hear me mention. So I knew this technology a little bit, which was good because I think it actually adds a lot of value. I liked hearing from Ed the mission around Cribl and kind of some of their core ideas about the company. And so I think they're going to continue to kind of grow as a company, and you're going to see more and more people having them to pretty much manage a lot of the data noise and logs and other stuff that goes into a SIEM, however you say it. So he also mentioned that he didn't mention on the podcast, but after we were done recording, he talked about it helps, break down the silos between groups. Because again, a lot of this is, some of this is operational, some of this is security, right? I think there's benefits for both sides of that. But then other groups want to get involved, and it really makes people's lives easier, as far as handling log ingestion, things like that. So really great episode. Really excited to talk to Ed about this. Really great conversation. Let's go ahead and get right into it. I have heard of you before. So I live in Nashville, and I got to know he's no longer with Cribl, but he was with Cribl. So, and I talking to him, so I know a little bit about it. And it sounds really interesting. It's also why I get all sorts of pitches from people saying, "Hey,
I can only imagine.
Yeah, come on the podcast." And I'm like, I have to vet. I have to vet a lot of them, a lot of AI right now too, which you're like, I don't know if I know this stuff. The vendor space has just changed so much. But Cribl, I was like, oh yeah, I got to have them on. I love Cribl. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's too funny. The AI is like, even if we don't do AI, we're going to say we do AI.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, and I mean, AI's been around, right? It's always.
Oh, there's nothing new about it. It's just
correct.
It's got attention.
It was released to the public, but I know there was already a lot of marketing around. I think vendors going, oh, we have machine learning, behind the scenes doing this. And it's like, you're running a script, aren't you?
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing. Like, there's always, the difference between what's AI, what's ML versus what's an LLM. And I think the thing I'm a little amused about is just the magical thinking, because, and then I see it. I mean, politically, boards are putting pressure on C-level. C-level's putting pressure on the rest of their team because they want to figure out we got to have an AI story. So what are we doing? But there's a real lack of understanding of where it matters. What's the business value? Like, I have this conversation every day with teams. What are you trying to do? What's the problem? Because, I mean, do you have a solution in search of a problem, or a problem that needs a solution? And then, because it's just, it's a daily thing.
Yeah. Yep. How are you guys positioned? I mean, you talked about how are you positioning AI into Cribl? I imagine you guys are, right? I mean, you have to, like I said, it's at the board level. You got to sell at some level, and unfortunately, you have to use the buzzwords, right?
Right. And so the big focus for the past 3 years is what's called human in the loop AI, where we're having AI agents help people use the tools better. And the reason why I'm a big fan of this approach, and also we're expanding, but the reason why I'm a big fan of human in the loop is you need accuracy, and using the tools better has a narrower set of variables that we can actually have, almost certain you're going to give someone the right answer, the right set of options. And also helping people use the tools better is everything. Enterprise tooling generally is hard to use, terrible. I mean, terrible. The UIs are bad. And so having something that's easy to use, people love that. Like, so I was Cribl's second customer, and I was told my team is like, I got Cribl to, make my bosses happy because we control costs, but I got it for my team because their lives got easier. They could spend dramatically less time doing work no one wanted to do because Cribl's made these things easier. And that's where the AI approach comes in. If you have an error message, you can ask what's called Cribl Co-Pilot, and it'll tell you, here's what this message means, here's what to do about it, here's how to resolve it. Write me a pipeline that does this, help me do this, how do I do that? And so there's a lot of options there. We're expanding. So this is something I've been really excited about, is now we're expanding more aggressively in terms of mapping. Are you familiar with schema, data schemas?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So a lot of security and IT tools have very well-defined schemas, and they want you to write their data into that schema in order to optimize the tool. Problem is, they're typically very esoteric, hard to use. And so this is where we're building in tooling to help automate that process too. And so we've done this for Splunk, we've done this for Elastic, we've done this for SecOps, and we're just expanding that to, just because this is just a good example. I was working with a large telco, and this was before we had this feature, and it took about a week to create a schema for a particular custom data type. Once we implemented what's called Copilot Editor, we're able to knock that down to about an hour. And so, I mean, it's a dramatic, 40, 50 hours down to an hour. And so this can make it easier, better use of the tools, better use of the teams. And from a business perspective, and this is where I try to emphasize, so much about AI is workflow productivity. And you have a really smart person instead of spending 40, 50 hours doing a task, they spend an hour doing a task. Because now, I mean, theoretically, you're talking 40x productivity for the same set of tasks. And that's the real payback for AI.
Yeah, no, I love that. Those are all use cases, and those are things I'm seeing just in my day-to-day work. And if you're putting it in the tooling, it just makes a lot where I don't have to go out to tooling. I can just do it in the tooling. And I was just thinking, I expect that from Cribl because, like, in general, like you've already said, it's there to make lives easier and like kind of reduce the noise. So it feels like that's kind of the core of Cribl, is how do we make everybody's life easier? Yeah. And so you guys are going to be one of the people one of the companies that can integrate AI effectively, and because you're kind of already thinking about that, because as I understand Cribl, right, it's you've got all these logs, right, that you're seeing, and 90+% of them, I don't know if you have an exact number, but 90+% of them, right, it's noise. There's not a lot, and you have to kind of one thing doesn't necessarily mean a thing, right? You have to correlate a bunch of different stuff. So Cribl's like kind of taking a lot of that and kind of giving you the real meat of what's in the logs.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes down to taking the toil out of the work and helping you find what you're looking for. So the middle model I like to describe about Cribl is, so the word Cribl is a derivation of the French word criblé, and it's French for screen. And so the 49ers in the gold rush 1840s, apparently they weren't great with French, and so they dropped the E, called it Cribl, and so this is where they use it as a way to find gold. So what you're doing is you're running your raw dirt from the stream through Cribl to help you sift out the things you don't want to find what you want.
That's great. I hadn't known about that. That's a great name. That's honestly just a great name.
Yeah. And this is something just to give you an idea. So as a customer, I was dealing with about 40 terabytes of data a day, talking billions. And I mean, billions with the big B of events coming in per hour. And so, and we a lot of it, because of work-defined financial services, we had to retain, but we didn't have to make searchable. But then this is the thing for me that struck me about Cribl, that was so great about Cribl, was it gave me the ability to get data from anywhere to anywhere. And just think about it from a model. Think about all the tools you've ever heard of. Everyone says, give me your data, I'll solve all your problems. They weren't interested in helping you put the data in the places you wanted it to be. They said, give me, because that's the whole business model. When you're looking at an ingest or, a rate, events per second, there's the whole model there. They're relying upon uncontrolled growth, where Cribl's saying, the value is the flexibility and also less data. And then this is where we see companies maturing into, once they get rid of the data they don't want, here's how we're going to help you make the data that you have more valuable. And this is something I think is really underappreciated. Again, it comes back to the engineering mindset. Less data never solves an IT or security problem. You always want better data. So find the right data. How do we enrich it? How do we make the data in terms of transform an ugly format into something that's useful, make it more actionable? Because that's what engineers really get excited about, is how can I solve my problems faster with less effort? And also, and this was the benefit for me, how can I get my CIO to stop yelling at me about spending too much money?
So I think the money is a good case, right? Like I can reduce your thing, but how do you, like engineers, it sounds like are going to love this. Again, you know, I've talked to people, I think this is great, but how do you get across the idea? And because I feel like talking to CISOs, right, there's always that fear of missing something.
Oh, yeah.
And so how do you address that as like, well, how do we know, Cribl, that you're not going to miss something that's very important to us and it's going to get us, you know, breached? Well,
and that's the beauty of it is, so the typical pattern with Cribl is data's coming in through Cribl Stream. And so that's their data that's our data processor that's in between your sources and destinations. You're going to have essentially classifications where you're going to say, hey, this is my detection and my immediate response. This is going to go to my SIEM. Everything else is going to go to my object storage. And that's how you answer the question of never having to say you're sorry. I always have all the data. It's just instead of putting it into my SIEM, which is going to run me $1 a gig easily, I could put the rest of this data into my object storage, which is going to run me 3 to 5 cents per gig. So now completely change my cost basis. And so I could put, and this is, it sounds trite, but it's true. You're always matching cost and value. My most valuable data goes into my most expensive platform to get a premium result. All that other data that I want to keep, data I might need, data I have to keep, it has no value, is going to go into the least expensive place possible.
Well, so how do you deal with vendors like a Splunk that are making money on that, and you're like pretty much coming in saying we're cutting how much money you're going to make and we're going to make the money?
This is a story I had to tell. My Splunk rep, so when I got Cribl, he was like, he didn't understand what was going on and he just dismissed it because like, I've never heard of this company. He made the mistake of introducing me to all of his other accounts. And within a year, all of his other accounts had Cribl too. And so then this is something that he finally came back to me later on. And the thing he understood is that now he got to keep all of his accounts. It was all sustainable. I think this is something that was really important, in that I can now afford to keep these tools. I'm now getting value from these tools. And this is something we see over and over again, where I'm not spending 20-30% extra year over year on these big expensive tools. I'm getting more value. I'm able to keep them. And I think this is the stickiness is what's important.
Yeah, I can see the long run value, right, of a rep for Splunk being able to, keep clients. Because you're right. Like I've been in organizations where it's like, yeah, this is getting too expensive, because you're always looking to bring in more and more logs. And I feel like we're gonna with AI, right, we're gonna continue to see an increase in login. And I think Cribl's positioned to help a lot of companies with that, and that's where it's going to be on the reps, because you are essentially taking money out of their pocket, but also they're like you said, keeping their clients. It almost sounds a little bit backwards, but they're keeping their clients because their clients aren't shifting to a different technology or, trying to go open source themselves, because they're like, oh, we're not gonna, have to pay Splunk. I mean, the whole joke is it was Cisco that acquired Splunk because they couldn't pay their bill, so they just acquired the company.
and this is where you're getting more value. You're happier with your vendors. You're happier with your tools. And we do work with a lot of vendors. We work with all the SIEM vendors, and I think a lot of the SIEM vendors are also starting to see the value for Cribl, because we can help onboard companies into their tool dramatically faster. Just a good example. A giant insurance company, just ridiculously large. They had been using their SIEM platform for over a decade, and their CISO wasn't really a cost, but it was more, I want more options. And he decided he was going to go to a next generation SIEM, and he was going to use us to do it. And we were able to migrate them in 5 months. So this is a Fortune 40 company trusting us to get them migrated in 5 months without us. And their CISO was very open. This would have been a 2-year project. And he still would have been worried about it. We got this done. We helped them do it. We got them to where they wanted to be, and they're very happy now. And we are working with, for example, this next generation SIEM vendor. Great tooling, but they've for them they're getting access to customers they wouldn't have access to otherwise, because it's just the risk. Imagine if you're a CISO and you know that, okay, SIEM migrations are hard because the number one issue is disruption of my posture. So now everyone's distracted. We're putting multiple agents. Data's getting split up. I don't know where things are. And a lot of CISOs are like, I hate my SIEM, but I'm afraid of getting breached. So how can I mitigate my risk and get me to a better place at the same time? And that's been a very successful story for Cribl for quite some time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What kind of dog do you have?
I got a giant black lab who's very angry at the UPS man.
I can tell you're getting a package right now. I figured just call it out. It's fine. I love it. So I guess do you have like a favorite customer success story? Because we kind of talked about like how customers can benefit from this, but do you have like I guess you kind of shared that, didn't you, with the next one?
I have a bunch. I mean, I can tell you about myself. I mean, this is where I always, because this is my first vendor job. And so this is where, for me, I'm always, thinking about things as from a customer perspective, and and it's been interesting working with sales reps and marketing. But I've been enjoyed in just the idea of the different things that matter. And this is just an example. So I mean, Clint ran a Facebook ad for about a week, and I didn't know what Cribl was, but I know who he was because I'd met him when he was at Splunk. We took a look at it, and I instantly knew this is something that I wanted. And so just the idea is that I had a very well-defined use case. And it also, here's the thing, it happened to be just enough money that my boss could sign off on it, but didn't have to get approval from his boss. And so that's how we got started. And we were able to see so much value so fast that we were now able to offer. So my CISO goes out and buys a very popular UBA tool that had no compatibility whatsoever with my SIEM. And I'm losing my mind because this is where I wasn't really thinking about Cribl. And we're thinking about it because like I'm going to have to install 100,000 agents. It's going to take me 9 or 10 months. And I'm just like, I don't have time for this. And one of the guys on my team was like, let's try this. And so we spent 2 hours with one of the Cribl founders, and we came up with a way to take our SIEM data, transform it to our UBA vendors data. And so now we split it at Cribl stream level. Now we push data into the UBA vendor just so it looked like the data it was expecting, and it worked. So we spent 2 hours. We spent 2 hours proving a concept, and we had to spend another couple of weeks to finish it up. But we were able to then start getting value from our very expensive UBA vendor in 2 weeks. And so instead of having to deploy 100,000 agents, instead of having to spend 9 to 10 months installing it, learning it, all this stuff, we were done in 2 weeks. And this is where my CISO could not wait to write a check for more Cribl, because he was like, I spent $1 million on this UBA tool. I was expecting to get zero value for 10 months. You've given me 100% value in 2 weeks. And it's like, and just think about from an executive perspective, I get my value now instead of 10 months from now. I get high quality data. I can control it. It's not being disruptive. From my team's perspective, we're not having to deploy 100,000 agents, which is, by the way, the worst thing in the world. I don't have my server admins looking to come kill me because they don't want to put another agent on the server. And so these are the kind of things that it's just a range of values. And so now we're getting more value from our tooling. And also then we're able to then bring data into the UBA almost on demand. And this is where like one of the guys working for me said something that really struck me, the idea of think about data as code, where I can take one format of data and then I can change it to make it whatever I want to be. And so next we started adding new tooling. So this is where we expanded into a data warehouse. So we moved our IR, we moved our threat hunt over to a data warehouse. So now they're able to get access to exponentially more data and more capabilities. And now we have a real security program in place where our SIEM is now focused on detections. All the data for all these other programs we take out of there. So we stopped spending any more new money for 3 years on the SIEM platform because we didn't need to. And we're getting more effectiveness from a data warehouse. We're getting more effectiveness from a next generation UBA platform, all because we can control the data. And that's where that flexibility came in, because I'm sure you've heard it before, security and IT is a data problem. It really is. And This is where we could finally control it and finally focus on not only less data, but better data. And I think that's the crux of it right there.
Well, the other thought I just had too is that we talk about fatigue within like a security operations center. This I would imagine dramatically reduces fatigue for people because they're only looking at data that is valuable to them versus stuff that's not.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where so much of the costs are. You're having to, because, and this is where, so, the thing about from a SIEM is the idea focused on event management and incident management. And so, and also data that's relevant, but for too many companies, and because it's their only option, they put all their data. I've even seen SIEM teams that are being used, that are being used for retention solutions. They're being used for monitoring solutions. They're like, hey, why can't I query for metrics in my SIEM? I was like, well, let's think about that.
Yeah.
And this is, and a lot of times for most teams, you got to remember, for most teams, they're just trying to get through the day. And so they're understaffed. They're just trying to get by, and they don't have a lot of choices. I have a proprietary agent writing a proprietary protocol to a proprietary data store, and they just don't have choices. And so giving teams that kind of choice and control to say, okay, I need metrics, but that's not appropriate for my SIEM. Here's 10 lines of code. I'm going to put my metrics where I can use it. So now I can solve this problem. I'm going to take all my retention and compliance data, and there's so much data as retention and compliance. I'm going to put this over my object store. It's just not going to be in my SIEM. It doesn't need to be there. And so and exactly right. You could focus on the right things, the right data, and just makes things easier.
Yeah, no, for sure. What are the tiers? Because it sounds like you have some different level of tiers for, purchasing Cribl. Because you said you saw some initial value, and then you got more money to buy more of it. It's like, how is kind of Cribl tiered?
Well, so from a pricing standpoint, you have two pricing models. So we have what's called self-managed, where you install it in, and so this is the Stream and Edge product, where that goes inside your environment. The control plane and the data plane are inside your environment. You own it, and it's what's called a top line license. So I'm going to buy 10 terabytes or 20 terabytes or 100 terabytes of license, and I can go up to that. Our other license is our cloud product, and our cloud product is really starting to get innovative because we started adding other options. And so now you're looking at a consumption model where you're buying credits, and then it's not exactly this, it's close, but basically 1 gig for 1 credit. And so now you're actually paying for exactly what you're using instead of a top line model. Imagine if I'm self-managed, I'm buying a 10 terabyte license, but I only use 8 terabytes a day. Now you have your CFO asking you, why are you only using 80% of your capacity? Why aren't you using more? Where from a consumption standpoint, if I use 8 terabytes on Friday, but I only use 4 terabytes on Saturday, I'm only paying for what I use. And so that covers our Stream product. So that's the product that sits in the middle, our Edge product that's on the endpoints. Now where cloud gets interesting is we're also offering search and lake products. And the search and lake products still come out to now it's storage per credit and then compute for credit when you're actually running searches. And it still goes back to just trying to make things easier. We brought out Lake because we started noticing that a lot of IT and security teams were not cloud experts. And so it's very, very typical. Like I'm running a NOC, I'm running a SOC. I got to, make a request to my Cloud Center of Excellence. 30 to 60 days, I'll get an S3 bucket. I need to go then for an IAM policy. That'll take another 30 days. And for a lifecycle policy, it'll take another 30 days. So 4 months later, I got what I need. So with our Lake product, click a button, 5 minutes later, you now have Lake. And if you need to make an IAM change, a lifecycle change, it's a slider. And it still goes back to how do we just make it easier for teams to get what they want at a very affordable price? And then search is the same thing. This is something I'm really excited about. Search. I owned a very large searching platform. I had 5,000 users. I cannot begin to describe how hard it was to train my users to use my platform efficiently. I basically went out and hired grandpas who were good at just being like disappointed and complaining all the time to go to my users to try to help them with searching, because you had to be pedantic and how to care about those things. Where the Cribl search product has AI built into it, where it's going to help users write better searches. It's always going to suggest, here's a better way to do this, here's a better way to do that. And I love that because it's just, teams spend an unfathomable amount of money on data searching tools, but if your users don't know how to use the tools, then what's the point? You're never going to get full investment from your full value from your investment. So having tooling that's going to constantly, help users use new features, try new things, write better dashboards, I think is just inestimable value. And it comes back to better results, make it easier, and make it affordable.
Yeah. Okay, cool. What are some, I guess, pain points when trying to deploy or get onboarded with Cribl?
I think some of the things our users really struggle with, a lot of times they've never really looked at their data. And so we spend a lot of time classifying their data, trying to look at,
What?
what are you doing with your data? Where, like, the first question I ask is, so, you're bringing in 10 terabytes. What are you doing with it? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how to understand it, how to classify it. Let's look at this. And I'm the way I always look at things is I try to look at what's your end goal and essentially work backwards. Because I always want our teams to have an understanding of the why and then work through the how. And so there is a little time there. And we have a lot of teams really sophisticated. I mean, super smart people. So we jump over that. And this is a lot of times it's going to be hardware deployment. Now you have to then start building logic, start understanding your data quality, and then start making changes over time. So much about that strategy, and that's where we help to just very, very methodically help teams through that.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and it's a struggle. Like, what is this? I mean, it's not uncommon unless teams are trying to get through the day. People talk about open source. So much about open source is this: I'm trying to get something that sort of works. Yeah, and this is where sometimes, occasionally, the sort of works is you put tooling in place, and now you understand that there was something fundamentally broken. It's probably been there for years, and once we get some better options in place, there's 10x more data than you thought there was, and that becomes a whole nother unfortunate conversation.
Yeah. Are you guys? I imagine you guys are getting integrated into a lot of like managed services, MDRs, MSSPs, things like that. As far as because they have their own SOCs that are kind of taking the tier 1 level off of a lot of clients. Are you seeing some of those vendors engaging with you?
Oh, absolutely. And this is a big thing. When you're trying to interface with multiple corporations, the level of integration is an issue. I heard a great comment that said that the biggest challenge in IT is integration. Think about from the middle model, like if you're an engineer building a road or build a bridge, there's like 5 ways to build a bridge because you've been building bridges for 1,000 years and we figured out what works and what doesn't work. In IT, you haven't been doing it that long. And now everyone's tried 1,000 different ways of doing something. And so it's the Tower of Babel of talking. So having something like Stream, Edge, Cribl Search in place gives you that flexibility as an MSSP provider that I can talk to anything. I can lower my integration costs. Think about you go into a company, you don't know what's there. There could be there's so many different ways to send data. So you're having to customize, install things. You're trying to understand all the weird things they're doing. And so an MSP provider spends a lot of time and they're not getting paid for that typically. They're having to wait. They have to get the integration done before they get paid. So by putting, Cribl tooling in place, they can lower that integration time dramatically and now offer more flexibility. So lower integration time, faster customer value, and also offer a suite of other options. Because day 1, you're pulling in, say, syslog. But day 2, it's going to be your cloud logs. At day 3, it's going to be your application logs. Day 4 is going to be, hey, let us help you with your retention. And so these are the kind of things that it opens up a whole new set of options for MSSP providers.
Yeah, no, for sure. What's on the roadmap for Cribl? Like, what's coming up?
This is what I'm really excited about. So we just had Cribl Con and real excited. I'm always just shocked. We had our first standalone multi-day conference. We had 700 users showed up, and it was amazing. And so Clint it was just, and this is just for young company and to be able to do this. So the Clint we're really talking now. We're going to move outside of our comfort zone of user in the loop AI. Now we're going to move to the idea of agentic AI. So it's still going to be validated. It's still going to be controlled. But start having AI tooling that's now helping in the background. So it won't be, AI is not necessarily going to ask every time, hey, I'm going to change this or I'm going to do this. We're going to be able to start deploying more options for our users to get value from AI, value from their data. It's still going to be a lot very controlled. It's still going to be very focused on value. I mean, it's just not going to be the pie in the sky kind of nonsense that I see from too many vendors. And I think I'm really excited, starting always asking the question, how can we help you do something faster, easier, and build trust? Because at the end of the day, the trust element is everything. If you can't trust your tooling, you can't trust your AI, then you're just not going to use it. And you're not going to get value from it. And so I like our progression. It's been slow. It's been steady. And now we're moving to the next frontier of how to get more value from AI and from your data.
Yeah. Anthropic, the Anthropic AI just released that report right on China, the China threat actor that has used Claude to essentially what you're talking about, build out a framework for using agentic AI. And what it does is it just kicks back to a human. So the human is, like you said, still in the loop, going, hey, here's this. What do you want me to do next? Right. And then the person tells them to do it. It sounds very similar to that, which we need too, right? If attackers are doing it, we need our defending tools to do something similar. And then essentially we're just having the AI do karate fights with each other. And then each human on the other end is going, no, go do this. And I think that's the way forward, right? We've moved away from kind of the in the weeds stuff and more like strategic, like how do you respond to this?
Exactly. Though the one thing I want to note about, I mean, I appreciate the transparency from Anthropic, but the interesting thing that struck me was the recommendation going forward was to use Claude to stop stop Claude.
Wow. Yeah.
Use Claude to stop Claude from attacking him. And so, I mean, that's, I think that's the thing to kind of look at. And so, we're going to have to work past this. We have to understand it. I think this is where the trust element becomes so important. I mean, just brutally important because, and it's not only attackers, but it's also companies to mine your data and other things that can create all sorts of issues. So we have to I'm always a big fan of trust but verify. Yeah.
No, and like I said, I think that's kind of at the core of Cribl, right? Is making people's lives easier, and how can we provide you a solution that actually does it instead of always just using buzzwords like zero trust or
right. Exactly. Yeah. Like what does zero trust mean? Like I've been working in segmentation for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could not have been like the insurance company I was mentioning that we went and visited the CISO in his office, and he was very upfront about, I don't feel like I get value from a lot of my vendors, and I'm getting value from Cribl. And that really stuck with me.
That's awesome. Any last thoughts? I feel like we've covered everything.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Thank you. It's always a privilege. I count myself lucky to be in this position. Best part of the job is talking to teams. I really enjoy that. I learned so much, and I appreciate being able to share. And I just see that, we're just trying to do something different, that fundamentally different. We're going to give you options. We're going to help, like for our data lake product, it's going to be as easy to get data in as easy to get data out. As contrast with other vendors where easy to get in, the data never gets out. We're going to help you open up your choices. If you want to connect different tools and use different SIEMs, hey, we're here to help you do it. We're going to help you enable you. Cribl's going to help enable what you want to do, not be a barrier. And the mission is great. I really appreciate it. So thank you. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, no, and I think it's great that you've come from the other side too. So you've seen the struggle, and you're just not spewing nonsense at prospective clients. So
I have this conversation with our sales reps all the time. Help your customers. Will help you do what you want to do. Always help them.
Yeah, everything else will take care of itself.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Ed, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.